Hello everybody, this is Kiran and today we are going to learn about one of the major phases of the STLC, which is test case designing phase. So we will understand how to create a test case sheet and what all fields are mandatory while we are filling in or trying to create a test case, and what is the thought process behind writing any test cases. So let's begin. So for understanding what test cases are and how to write test cases, we must understand what is use case, scenarios, and then we have to know about test cases. You have to understand how to write use case, or a use case is provided by the business analyst team to us based on how many actors are acting on the system which we are testing. So let's say we have a banking application. So this banking application can be used by a banker, and at the same time it can be used by an end user. So you have your own banking login, user ID, password, and your banker also has his own user ID, passwords. You two have a different view of and view as well as privileges to that particular software, so that you have to understand who are the actors on the system, and then you have to decide on the use cases to any software which you are trying to test. Once the use cases are decided, we have to extract scenarios out of use cases. Now, to know scenario, what is a scenario? Scenario is any testable entity. Anything which can be tested will be called as a scenario. So based on scenarios, we'll be writing further test cases. So imagine we are working for the banking application and the use cases has been decided. So let's say the use cases are banker login, the user login, the finance admin login, the customer support panel login. Now we choose one of the use cases. Let's say it might be the internet banking of the end user. So for that use case, we have to write multiple scenarios. Those scenarios can be debit card registration and usages, loan system, the internet banking flow, the internal section wherein a person can add pay, a person can transfer money, withdraw money, apply for different mutual funds. So many scenarios can be divided. Now we choose one scenario and we start writing the test cases for that. So let's say we choose a scenario for internet banking. So for internet banking, we can write many test cases, beginning from a person logs into the internet banking software, and then a person needs to probably add a payee. So for add pay, there will be so many test cases. So let's say a person wants to add a pay. So there is a form. So if I just show you quickly in terms of diagram. So let's say there is a form which a person needs to fill in for adding a pay. So this form will be the name of your pay, the bank account number of your pay, the phone number of your pay probably, and then you have to click on submit button, and then you get an OTP which you have to fill in the next page. So all these are different test cases for that particular scenario which we are testing. Moving forward, now once the scenarios are decided, we have to start writing the test cases. So for that, we have to understand how to write it and what all fields are mandatory. For that, we'll see a test case sheet sample so that we can get a good idea on how to write test cases. This is a sample test case sheet which is having different columns, some of which are mandatory, some of are optional. So let's see what all we have here. So there is a test case ID, which is a unique ID to all the test cases for their identification later on. Then there is something called module name. While you are testing any website or any product or any software, you have to know that there are different sections and modules. To make the test case sheet more sorted and organized, we can add this column or not. It depends. So module name. Third column is title. The title is a brief introduction to what the test case is about. Then we have something called summary. So summary will be majorly describing the test case in detail. So then after that, we have something called preconditions. Preconditions are all the steps which you have to perform before reaching to that particular test case. Then there are steps to reproduce. Now, it is an important thing or important column to maintain. Why? Because any tester or any developer or anybody in the team who reads this test case should be able to understand how to reach to that particular situation which we are talking about in the test case. So, if you have written some test case about login button, so steps to reproduce will be like go to the particular URL, click on the user ID box and fill in the user ID, click on the password box and fill in the password and hit on the submit button. So that's about the steps which you have to mention in the steps to reproduce. Then we have something called expected behavior and there is something called actual behavior. So expected behavior is as per the business requirements, what behavior is expected out of that particular test case, and there is something called actual behavior. So till here you can fill in your sheet before executing the test cases. So up till expected behavior you can perform in the test case writing phase. Now once you execute the test cases, you run the test cases manually, your actual result field will be filled in, and based on these two fields this testing status field will be filled. So let's say this and this are same. So if this is A, or let's say if this is A, then this is A. So if both are same, it will be passed. But if this is B and this is C, then this is going to fail. So these two things have to be same. Only then the testing status will be passed. If there is a difference in the requirement and the actual output, there will be a failure of the test case. So based on the failure, you have to raise a bug. So if any test case is failing while you are executing your test cases, you have to raise an issue or defect or bug. So you have to mark it in your any tool which you're using. Let's say we are using Jira for now. So you have to mention the Jira ID in the test case sheet for a proper maintenance of the bugs. And there's a few more fields in this sheet which is important. Test data. So test data is suppose you try to log in using some particular username and password and it's not allowing you to log in. So maybe you can mention the test data for the sake of the person who is trying to read and understand the test case. Okay. So test data is very important. Then there is test case creator, somebody who has written the test case, and the tester who has executed the test case. So these two people may be same, may not be same. It can be, you are writing test cases, but your colleague is executing them. So in that case, test case creator and test case whosoever is executing the test cases, it will wait. There is automation ID. So if you have written an automated suite for your test cases, manual test cases, you can mention the ID here in the automation ID section. So these are the majorly used columns in any test case sheet. So how and where we write test cases? So mostly we can maintain the test cases in Excel files or Google Sheets, and it can be shared amongst teammates, or you can also upload the Excel files in a Jira ticket for maintaining test cases. You can also use tools like TestRail. TestRail is a tool where we can write test cases and execute test cases and get very good reports in terms of how many test cases passed and fail in pie chart formats and all. So TestRail course will be different. There are different tools like Azure DevOps that can also be used for managing test cases and test suite. So we can also learn about them in the latest sessions. So for now, this is a test case sheet which is managed and maintained for writing the test cases, and you have to keep updating them as and when the new features are added. So you can create different scenarios and add the new test cases. So that's all for today. We'll learn about different other topics in another sessions. Thank you.